Brian, right, you can call the meeting to order whenever you like and call the first item of business.
All right. Welcome to the Bellingham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for January 6th. It looks like, I looked at the agenda, looks like it's also listing the public hearing, but it looks like there's only the one item on the agenda. Is that correct? Just the 207 Mechanic Street? All right. Motion to open the hearing?
Hello.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So I guess I can read the public hearing. The Bellingham Zoning Board of
I
Appeals.
move to waive the public reading.
You want to waive it? Sure.
Yes, please.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So the applicant is Peter March. I believe I saw him on.
Yeah, he is.
Aye.
Good evening.
Okay. So it looks like reading through this. So you were granted. The only thing I was a little confused about is that on the application it notes a special permit, but then on the it listed as a variance in another section.
So,
But I guess
Brian,
either way, it's not. Oh, go ahead, Jim.
If you like, I can give a quick overview, and then maybe Mr. March would like to, give a brief presentation. But so the ask here is as I think everyone's familiar with 207 Mechanic Street. That's where Rapid Refill is currently. The request is for a variance to section 240-43A, which states that signs, any part of which moves or flashes, or signs of traveling light or animated type, and all beacons and flashing devices, whether a part of, attached to, or apart from a sign, are prohibited. And so there was a little bit of confusion at first. The applicant has applied for a building permit. The building commissioner issued the building permit. However, it had a condition, his standard condition, that it simply would not move or flash, and it was limited to that being, I believe, 60 seconds. Excuse me.
I think
So
it said
no
on
less-
the other that it was 60 seconds and the building inspector changed it to 50 seconds.
Okay, so nevertheless, it's
Yeah.
the applicant is seeking for significantly less than that of which the building commissioner has authorized. So in speaking with the applicant originally, it was applied for as special permit. But when I noticed the application, I spoke with the applicant and we agreed, I believe, that we'd move forward as a variance. There isn't a special permit remedy for this. So this would have to be a variance to that bylaw that I just read out.
And it looks like in the application, it's a change to every 10 seconds. So I guess from the 50 to 10. Okay, so I guess I'll let Peter March kind of walk us through it then.
Good evening. My name is Peter March, New Hampshire Signs, 66 Gold Ledge Avenue, Auburn, New Hampshire. And we're here for Rapid Refill. So Mr. Cookfors basically stated the case. There's a little bit of confusion about whether this is a special permit or a variance. It's turned into a variance. And essentially, the variance relates to our definition of flashing versus the building inspectors. We're requesting that we reduce the time on the on just the toggle unit and the digits. You should have a picture of the sign that was granted. We have a building permit for that sign. The toggle unit is the piece in the top right-hand corner of the price unit that toggles back and forward, and when it toggles the price. So in this particular case, it will say market pay, and the price may well be $2.80 a gallon, and then non-member, and the price will change to say $2.90 a gallon. And we're looking for something like 10 to 15 seconds. We're not hung on the 10 seconds. We're asking for something like 10 to 15 seconds, which would be a reduction from the 50 seconds. The signs are typically not classed as message centers. They don't emit a huge amount of light compared to a message center. And in fact, the manufacturer of this routinely issues a letter that says that the unit doesn't emit any more light depending on the amount of digits that it displays. So why is this important? Well, dual pricing is unfortunately, and it's a fact of life in the petroleum industry. The trend was really started by Cumberland Farms, who offered a member non-member price. And essentially what that is it's a method of trying to overcome the very high credit card fees charged by credit card companies. So if you put an Amex card, which is one of the worst cards, into a pump, Amex will charge you about 3.5% of the value of the transaction, which at 280 is a fair amount of money. The Cumberland Farms model tried to eliminate that by people using debit cards, so that the Cumberland Farms model is a debit card, and essentially that is what the Garrett's rapid refill model is as well. It moves away from people using credit cards, and it offers people that pay in cash or debit a decent discount for doing that, and it's generally 10 to 15 cents. There's no fixed number on it. So it's one of these things that when Cumberland Farms sort of started to charge, it forced a number of other people to follow. And this station is owned by a company, Garrett's Family Market, Garrett's, Volta Oil, Rapid Refill. They're also anonymous, and they're out of Plymouth, Massachusetts. And they operate a number of stations. And part of what they're going to do to this site is they're going to upgrade the entire site to a much better look. And the dual pricing is part of that. Is part of that marketing effort.
Can I just ask a quick question? So in
yeah,
in the images in the packet, so the flashing where the price would change is the one that's shown in red, right? It's the main one.
Yeah, so it says market. It says 6x3378 as is. That's just the production drawing of it. So what would change is that panel, and it would show market pay, and then the actual digit, the regular digit, which currently shows 888, would change from 290 to 280, and then the diesel would change from $3 to $3.10 at the same time.
And then the member thing just turns on and off. Is that what that one?
Well,
does?
it would be market pay non-member, market pay non-member every 15 seconds, something like that.
Okay, yeah, that was the only thing I was wondering. Okay.
And then the price would reduce, and the price would increment again. Part of the effort to do this is because the old way of doing it was to basically put a panel in the sign that said cash or cash price or something like that. There've been stars and banners and fluttering things, all sorts of stuff that indicated a lower price for cash versus credit. And this is a method of trying to make sure that it's communicated properly. In the petroleum industry, this is one of the most common complaints that individuals have when they pull up to a gas pump. They think they're paying $2.80, put a card in, and suddenly you're paying $2.90. And I think it's probably happened to all of us. So essentially the raison d'etre for this thing is to make the prices and site identification easier to read, and allow the user to be more transparent in pricing his fuel. There are other ways of doing it. We could add digits to it, and people do that. So you'd add another couple of digits to it. But when you do that, you reduce the size of the digit. You can see this sign from about 500 foot away in either direction. So if a car is doing 30 miles an hour, you'd have about 11 seconds to read it. If we're asking for between 10 or 15 seconds, a car would basically see a single cycle on average. And I know that's a generalization, but that's roughly what it is. If we had to cycle it every 60 seconds, only 1 in 5 cars would actually see the price, and it would sort of defeat the purpose. So really the goal is to try and communicate the price in a clear and unambiguous way. And I think it's a fair way of showing motorists what the price is. As part of a variance, obviously, I have to prove certain points, and I think Amy sent a revised document out maybe yesterday, Amy. So literal enforcement of the provisions of the bylaw would involve a substantial hardship, financial or otherwise, to the petitioner or applicant. Defining flashing as changing every 50 seconds rather than 10 seconds would result in the owner not being able to communicate dual prices effectively. He'd either have to keep the toggles on for 50 seconds, which means that motorists would not see a complete cycle. He'd have to add a placard that communicated only one of the two conditions, either non-member or member, or more commonly cash or credit, or add multiple smaller digits to communicate those prices. And those are smaller and more difficult to read. As I said, the sight lines on this site are about 500 feet from either direction. The hardship is always the circumstances relating to the soil conditions, shape, or topography. This situation really only affects gas stations who must change prices frequently. It's on the corner of Maple and Mechanic, and the sight lines are particularly long, about 600 feet on Route 140 heading southwest, about 500 feet heading east on the same road, 650 on Maple heading south. In addition, the junction has 3 lanes of traffic with dedicated left and right turn lanes. Combination of having to change prices frequently, the complexity of this junction and these sight lines make this station almost unique. The only other one that I could think that probably looked a little bit the same was maybe the Mobile at 270 Main, but traffic tends to travel much slower past that site, and the sight lines on that station are around 250 feet rather than the 600 that we have here. To the third point, desirable relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. Advertising prices in a fair way benefits the public. Changing the prices every 10 to 15 seconds has no negative effect on the public good. I'd argue that it probably has a positive effect. And to the second point, nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent or purpose of the bylaw. The bylaw can't have been written with this technology in mind, since the technology is specific to gas stations, it's specific to cash credit pricing, and it really is pretty new. I mean, it's become widespread in the last, I'd say, 3 to 4 years. Cumberland Farms had it longer than that, but due to a licensing deal, they kept most other people out of the market. So it's really only become widespread in the last, maybe less than 2 years. And one of the goals of the ordinance is to facilitate the adequate provision of transportation. I think the sign and allowing it to change at that rate probably furthers that goal. And that I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Yeah, I think the only other question I was going to ask was, so back when this was granted, was that ever thought of before to have the need to kind of have this to toggle between? Or again, this is like you're saying, it's a rapid kind of a newer.
Well, way back where the sign currently is a manual sign, so it's not it does not have the ability to, it's not a digital sign. What we're trying to do is we're trying to upgrade it to a digital sign. And that's the other part of this. There is a good reason that I didn't mention for digital signage in general on gas stations, and that is because they hook the POS system, the point of sale system, into the sign, the pump toppers that are on the pumps themselves, and the cash register, and they get hooked into a network. So one of the benefits of this sort of signage is the fact that the owner could change prices from a remote location, which is what people are trying to do.
No, I get that. I guess what I was curious about is in the packet, it kind of says several conditions were applied to the permit, and it says under 3, toggle time. After discussion with the building inspector, the interval was changed to once every 50 seconds from every 60 seconds. Yeah. So I guess I'm just saying it seems like this was discussed before, and it was already reduced from 60 to 50.
Correct.
So I was just curious, when was that approved? And
this was a couple of months ago. We asked for this permit a couple of months ago, and we haven't started construction until we resolve the issue of the 50 seconds, bring the 50 seconds to 10 to 15 seconds.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I personally don't see a big issue with it. I was just curious about that. It seems like.
Can I explain to you what how it all happened?
Okay, yeah, no, I was just curious because I could see that. I'm just curious about the discussion happened before, and then how come that wasn't broached before to go to the.
They apply for the, okay, and it has the LED and the flashing, so that's on automatic. We don't allow anything under 60 seconds. My conversation with him, just that. And they obviously pushed back and wanted to do it, with a lot less time flash. And I said, look, I'm not going to go out there and have a stopwatch. I flashes every 50 seconds. That's fine. But if it's flash every 15 seconds, it does not abide by the intent of our regulation. Now, the other problem is these new LED signs, which I'm sure everybody's aware of. They're everywhere now, and the problem is they're very bright, and with the flashing and the brightness, the regulation is only 10 feet from the right of way, so it actually does create a glare for pedestrian traffic. So we try to keep, I'm always, this is the problem with the enforcement part. Now, the brightness, I'm always on the people with the signs, because there's one person controlling it electronically, and over time it gets brighter and brighter, and I have to contact the person. I have to find the person that's controlling the sign. So that's the process behind it. The flashing part is controlled that way as well. They all want their messages out quicker, and I understand that, but the problem is it creates a hazard for pedestrians, So with that in mind, the gas stations in general all over town, and like the gentleman stated, in the last 2 or 3 years, we have a lot of new stations. We have down South Bellingham, the Cumberland Farms. We have the competitor right across the street. We have the Irving down North Bellingham. All of them have abided by our regulation, where what they do is they put the regular gas price and then the member gas price right below each other. That way, there's no need for flashing. When they change the price, obviously, when the price is updated, maybe once a day or whatever, it obviously will flash at some point, but not a timed flash. So that was the solution to all the other gas stations in town. They took and put both prices on their sign. The signs are big enough, as you can tell. I don't know what the letters, the numbers here, what the dimension is on the red. I know you had mentioned it to me before in our discussion, but what's the height of those red numbers there now in dimension?
I believe they're 20-inch letters. I'm just looking through, trying to find the drawings.
Yeah, it says 21 for the red.
Yeah,
inches.
So they're 21 inches.
So all the other stations in town, which I'm sure some of the members have noticed, that all the stations put both member and non-member price up at the same time. So that's how they got around the animation part. So I'll let the board, just to inform the board on the other stuff that allowed in town. But the 50 seconds thing was just a comment by me. It wasn't an amount of time that I gave them. It was just a comment saying, I'm not going to be out there timing it with my watch, but if it's a flashing thing, I'm going to enforce it. And that's how that came, just so the board knows.
Tim, do you have any idea what the size of the numbers are on any of the other stations?
Yeah, they're not 20 inches. Probably, they're probably about half that. This probably about 10 inches high, maybe more. I mean, it's all. This is a big sign, so you fit two different dimensions, two different displays on. But that's that's up to them. I know they have their marketing type of marketing they want, but the other stations, I think, are probably around 10 or 12 inches high each one, I would think. Maybe not even.
The one comment I'd have is that if we were to implement 10 or 12-inch characters on the site, they just wouldn't be visible from the site has particularly long sight lines, somewhere in the 500-foot mark. I'd argue that they don't really flash. I mean, if you are driving by at 30 miles an hour, you're going to see one rotation. Now, if you get stopped at the traffic light, you're going to see more than one rotation. But they don't rotate in the sense that a message center, showing a graphic would rotate. The other thing is that I can provide a letter to the board that from the manufacturer that says that the light output of this does not change regardless of what what digits are displayed on it.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
Okay. There's definite reasons why we have these zoning bylaws. And a flashing neon sign at the Welcome to Bellingham, Massachusetts, is not very appealing. I'm just going to put that right out there. To say that people go to that intersection at 30 miles an hour and they never see it, obviously, Mr. March, you've never driven that intersection, because at a 60-second interval at that intersection, you'll probably see it a half a dozen times. Let's just be honest. Okay.
I've been there
And
several
as far
times.
as applying for a variance, the hardship is self-created. The hardship is being self-created by the style of sign you wish to put there. That's the hardship that you're having. It's not nothing wrong with the property, the sight lines. You're wishing to put the sign up there. So, in my opinion, you're going to have a hard time with the variance telling me this is a hardship. It's a self-induced hardship based on what you want to put in. That's my 2 cents for right now, at least.
Well, I guess I would feel, after kind of the points by Tim too, is that you'd have to say, is there something owing to this location in particular as to why it can't adhere to the, doing the double digits, that this particular intersection, this gas station cannot do what the other gas stations have done? Like, what makes it so unique? But I'll let other people speak.
If I
Yeah,
may, Ryan. Go ahead, Ryan, you go ahead.
Yeah, my question was going to be, what is typical in Massachusetts for the changing signs? What's the typical range or period between the changing signs in Massachusetts? I'm sure they exist elsewhere. So industry standard, what is the interval between the switch?
Depends on the location, but generally they're 10 to 15 seconds. That would generally be the normal, the normal number.
Do you have examples of nearby towns with that
This
interval?
this is relatively new, but I mean, I could tell you that a number of towns are implementing. I can't off the top of my head. I mean, we had a variance in Merrimack, New Hampshire, for the same company, 2 months ago, and they accepted 10 to 15 seconds for the reasons that I just stated. There's no easy way to advertise differential fuel prices on this site fairly, without creating a lot of clutter. This seems like a very unobtrusive, easy way to do it. That's fair on the motorist. It's also fair on the station owner.
If I may,
Go ahead.
go ahead, finish your thought, Ryan. I'll wait.
No, but in my opinion, I can see how having less light is a good thing, but the switching, I agree with Peter and the fact, I drive through that intersection every day, and I do have to wait at the red light every single time. It's rare that you get a green light where you just go. So I see that, I look at that sign every day, and I am stopped at a red light, and I can look at it, and I think, 30 to a 50 second or even 60 second interval will be seen by almost every driver, unless you're driving at 2 a.m.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Yeah, because I drive through it all the time too.
So if I may chime in here, on the rendition, you're showing rapid on the top of the sign, quite larger than the old sign. If you just reduce the size of the top of the sign, you'd be able to have both prices in there without having the flashing.
That's definitely the case. The goal is to turn it into a Garrett's Family Market, which has a more of a square-looking top sign. The benefit to the town is that if I put 4 digits into it, cash credit for diesel and cash credit for regular, you're going to have a lot more clutter and a lot more light egress. So it's going to look a lot more cluttered if I have 4 digits rather than the two and the toggle that I currently have.
Mr. Chairman? I think if most of the board members, I don't think Ray was around, we had another proposed illuminated flashing sign for the town of Bellingham, maybe 2-3 years ago. And that got turned down for very similar reasons. And if I remember correctly, that wasn't even going to be on our roadway. It was going to be on Route 495. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how tight we hold this bylaw and these signs. I mean, this is a huge ask for the town of Bellingham.
Brian, if I could make a point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, so Well, just to pick up on what Peter said, this has actually been a number of different, or this issue's been discussed in a number of different applications over the years. And there was actually, I don't know if it was 5 or 6 years ago or something like that, or longer, there was actually a sign bylaw committee that looked into this kind of stuff and the flashing versus, what to flash and what's not. And I think, the preference is, broadly speaking, is that, and the goal of the bylaw is that there is a preference not to have these sort of changing flashing signs. And the 60-second interval, as my understanding was premised off of a DOT regulation where that's the length of time that they permit changes in signs. So there's a safety component, and there's just an aesthetic preference that's been expressed a number of times when this issue's been looked at, and all of the other applications that have been brought before the town with a similar request have all been denied. So I think it would be, it's not what the town necessarily, it's a small ask, and I think we're splitting hairs, I think, to some degree, but it's just not what the town has wanted in the past. We haven't permitted it in the past, and it would be unfair, I think, to the other businesses that have made similar requests to grant this on a variance basis where there needs to be extenuating circumstances to change the application of the law in town for this particular parcel. So for all of those reasons, I just don't, I don't think that we should necessarily grant this particular request given what we've done in the past.
Well, I guess I also worry about setting precedent. That again, like, to me, it's like, what's so unique about the rapid refill that these other businesses and gas stations have been able to adhere to it? And then you're giving kind of like now the next application will come down the line saying, well, it was granted here, we need the same condition. And I think you're right that if other previous applicants have come forward, I guess to me, I definitely agree with Peter driving into that intersection every day that you're at that light for quite a while, unless, like Ray said, unless you're going like in the middle of the night or 2 a.m. I just don't see, to me as well, there seems like there's alternatives to the variance. I mean, even doing the smaller digits, it sounds like it's in line with some of the other gas stations. So, I mean, I would kind of tend to agree, but I'd be curious.
Mr. Chairman, if I can add my 4 cents now. One of the things I think we need to be careful of as a board is exactly that, setting this precedence in overruling our sign bylaw, because if this is approved, every single sign in the town is going to be at us. Every gas station, every business, they're going to want these flashing signs because it is the newer technology.
Yeah.
And I can appreciate that, but we've made it very clear in the past that we don't want that in our town.
But Art's made a good point too, that over a third of the sign is
yeah,
the new rapid refill logo.
And that's to be honest with you, that's probably their marketing department. There's probably their set standard for the sign. They probably got a couple dozen made or wherever it is, and that is their corporate logo and their sign that they want to put in.
Which I get, but I guess again, it's to say that it's not that there isn't other avenues with the display. But
Mr. Kupfer, can I ask a question? The 60-second, I can't find it anywhere in the code. All I can find is the word flashing, and that is an undefined term. It's not defined in the code.
Right, and so in lieu of the exact measurement, we did an evaluation about 5 or 6 years ago, and we did pull a number of safety studies and analysis and state regulations that determined that 60 seconds. In lieu of that, I mean, it was simply we were denying at the building permit level all LED signs because you can make any of those animated or flashing. So we tried to work with the business community to make a rational improvement that we thought would have a safe standard. And so that's where that number comes from.
But it's not being written into the code, correct?
Right. So in lieu of that, we could just have denied your application at the building permit level.
If I understand the actual sign bylaw correctly, these digital LED signs, they're not even allowed, correct?
Well, so that was the original interpretation that LED signs, because they have the ability to move, flash, etc., that those were prohibited. However, there is mechanisms in which you see a number of businesses in town where it's just a stagnant LED sign that says, "Here's my business logo," and so we worked with them to say that it's basically you can create a slideshow if you really needed to with that grand investment, because it is an investment for those signs. That after a minute of that stagnant, that you would be able to transition to whatever it may be. But for the majority of these signs that we do have in town, there's a couple that are pre-existing, but other than that, they are just the stagnant sign of "here's my business name."
Again, I'd raise the point that nowhere, this seems extremely arbitrary to call it 60 seconds or sometimes 50 seconds. Flashing to me is something that rotates at several times a second, not once every 15 seconds.
Several times a second would be quite a bit, but
yeah. I mean, listen, we could split hairs all night and just deny the whole permit too. So
I guess also we have to look at what interpreting the bylaws is a whole nother.
Yeah.
We have to follow the bylaws and determine whether or not it's warrants deviating from the bylaw, I guess.
And just to refine the point a little bit, I don't believe it's arbitrary at all. I believe if we want to be factual, it creates a safety concern for flashing, changing lights at a busy intersection. That there is a concern about the brightness so close to the roadway, and
that should not be an issue here because the sign permit's been granted. We've already invested money in bringing this thing to fruition.
But I agree, but you're asking for a variance. You haven't hit any of the markers there for that. So I'm just expressing the point that in order for us to grant a variance in this condition, we have to hit the points, and you haven't hit a single one. And I think there's concerns, there's enforceability concerns, there's all of the reasons that we discussed. It's not arbitrary. It's been something that the town has dealt with a number of times consistently over the years. So it's not arbitrary. I think it seems like the direction in which the board is going is it's based on facts and in the historical enforcement of this particular provision.
Okay, well, I guess I don't know if there's any other comments, but I guess you could kind of get the general feeling from the board. So I guess we could either... Oh, go ahead.
Is there anybody from the public that we open? Do we want to open up to the public?
Yeah, good idea. Anyone from the public?
I'm not seeing anybody, Brian.
Okay.
Motion to close the hearing.
second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I guess the applicant, I guess you're getting a general kind of feel of where the board is leaning. So I guess it's up to you whether or not you would like to withdraw with or if you would like us just to continue and vote.
I think I'd prefer to withdraw, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Well, I'll move to allow to grant the withdrawal without prejudice.
I'll second
Second.
that. Oh, God, I it's all you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. And again, Peter, I mean, it's not that we're not sympathetic.
Yep, no, I understand.
Yeah, it's not, I could see how it seems like it's not a big ask, but again, I know just like Brian Salisbury was saying, and it was really, I think it was you, Brian, and Jim Dunley really spearheaded a lot of that, right? With the bylaw for the signs, and Jim Comfort.
We were on that committee.
But like you said, it's not arbitrary. There was a lot of thought and time dedicated towards it. So, and with a variance, there has to be a high threshold to reach to grant a variance. So we appreciate you taking the time and meeting with us. And
likewise, I appreciate your time.
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Do we just move on to minutes? Is that the next?
I think it's minutes and it's meetings.
So I'll move to approve the minutes as drafted.
I will,
We did-
if I may, I made some edits and I sent them to Amy, if just very small ones. If I may move to approve the minutes revised. Just was a misspelling of the name and then just a couple spelling mistakes. That was all.
Amy does not make mistakes, right?
But,
Oh, I do. I like
improvements.
to be called out on them. Thank you, though, Ryan. I appreciate it. I have them and I can make those. Thank you for reading them.
Thank you.
Sounds good to me. I know. Does anyone else have anything else with the minutes?
There was one point where I saw it says there instead of the, but I don't have them in front of me. And I
Those were
think that-
them. There were two theirs and just my name at the very beginning, and those were my only comments.
All right, great. I'll second then with the changes.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Then just motion to close. Is there anything else on the agenda?
We got to approve the meeting dates for next year, or for this year.
Okay.
Motion to approve the minutes as shown.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay.
Brian, can I ask Jim one question?
Yeah.
Jim, I know we talk about this every couple of years, but there's only a couple of boards on the town's website that the board members' phone numbers are listed.
Yeah.
Is that necessary?
Nope.
You getting some
No,
phone
not-
calls, Brian?
That's
No, I just happened to, I forgot, it's something that's talked about and I forget about it. And then I go back and it's like, why is that board, there's another board too that has phone numbers.
Yeah,
I
that's
think it's
just
the
how.
select board.
Yeah, it's just historically how it's always been. But slowly, boards are asking for those to be removed. So we can certainly remove any numbers on the website. There's no requirement for phone numbers on websites.
Yeah, I would suggest that that's no longer necessary. I think it's probably a product of back when the town didn't have a staff in the planning department and people needed to reach whomever on the board. But I would prefer not to have my cell phone number.
I'll second that one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely, we can definitely take that off. Not a problem.
Leave Artie's number though.
Nobody wants to talk to me.
That's true.
Don't say that to him. Motion to close the hearing.
Second.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Hey, guys, have fun. I won't be at the next meeting.
Have fun. Where